Oh, we have a lot to discuss. Yes, we do, guys. Welcome back to the channel. Carlos Alcaraz and Novak Djokovic are out of the US Open after shock upset losses to Van der Zandschulp and Popyrin, respectively. Alcaraz losing in straight sets to Botic from Holland, and for Novak Djokovic losing in 4 sets to defending champion Novak Djokovic, of course, losing in 4 sets to the recently crowned Canadian Masters champion Alexei Popyrin from Australia. We're going to get into both the matches in detail, talk about what happened during the match using some of these really good Matchflow graphics to show us the momentum in each and every match, and also set by set. We're then going to also break down tactically how it played out, and I will also talk about their post-match comments because there's some interesting bits to dive into, and I read between the lines with in terms of the comments there. And after my experience at Wimbledon at presses, I think it's always interesting now to hear the press conferences and get a feel of what they're saying, and also maybe potentially try and read between the lines and understand where their head's at, especially after these types of losses. Before we do get into it, though, remember that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Okay, so we're going to talk about Carlos Alcaraz's first, just because that was the first loss. And look, I mean, it was a very interesting match, to say the least. Van der Zandschulp played lights out, massive hitting, paired with fantastic transition and net game. He closed the net so well, actually winning 80% of his net points, 28 out of 35 net points won. So impressive from him. Carlos looked really flat at times and erratic at other times. So it was a very strange performance from Alcaraz. And I think it's just to do with, I would say, maybe mental and physical fatigue. But look, he is prone to the occasional match where his forehand is off. And I was talking to Steve Flink about this at Wimbledon. We saw each other in person. And, we were talking about the Medvedev match. And I said to Steve at the time, look, the only way that I see Medvedev winning is if Alcaraz has an off forehand day, and that can happen, and that's where Medvedev will then be able to take some sort of advantage. And Van der Zandschulp is a slightly different player, of course, to Medvedev. He likes to come to the net a lot, and he's got that really extreme serve on forehand grip. But he was extremely solid. He was hitting the lines. He was just redlining, really, I think, throughout the whole match. And for Alcaraz, he just wasn't timing the ball particularly well compared to what we're normally used to seeing from him. The forehand was, it was off. It was one of those matches where the forehand just wasn't quite clicking for him. And normally he would problem solve and he'd find another way to make it work and get the win, either by, for example, coming to the net more or using more variation, or even, utilizing the drop shot and the lob. And he would find different ways to win points because he has that variety. But I think Van der Zandschulp's level, just how high his level was, paired with the mental and potentially physical fatigue that he's feeling at the moment after, a lot of tennis being played. He won Wimbledon, then the final of the Olympics. So, he's played the maximum amount of matches he could have played. Also won Roland Garros. So he's played, 3 tournaments back to back to back where he's played the whole tournament. And then, of course, had a short break, went to Cincinnati, lost in the second round, and now he's back at the US Open. So, yeah, I just think it was the perfect storm, if I'm being honest. Definitely not a performance that you'd expect from Alcaraz. And actually, I had picked him to win the tournament. I think initially I was talking to Rick Macy about this, and I asked him, look, do you think that a loss to Novak Djokovic will have a bearing on how this US Open goes? Because it could. It was a heartbreaking loss, right? 2 tiebreakers and 14 break points. No one broke in the end, and Alcaraz lost a really tight match. And he was expected to win. He was the favorite going into it after dismantling Djokovic really easily at Wimbledon. And he had a similar type of loss last year in Cincinnati, and it took him a while, I think, to really recover from that mentally. It was a very taxing match, I think, not just on the body, but on the mind. And I do think this might have had the same effect on that Olympic final loss. But He says it's not the case, and we'll get into his post-match thoughts. And maybe it's just a case of, look, Zandschulp played really well on the day. Alcaraz didn't play so well. There we go. And that's tennis. That could be it. Alcaraz only won 60% of his first serve points compared to 78% for Zandschulp. And then if we look at the ace count, so 2 aces apiece, not really much to talk about there. I think Zandschulp obviously can serve big, but it was more what was coming after that serve. He was hitting his spots and then massive hitting for the +1 shot, and then also close down the net so impressively, as we mentioned. 80% of net points won, 35 times he came to net, which is just so good from him. Carlos Alcaraz, winners to unforced errors of 21, winners to 27 unforced errors, so not great reading if you're a Carlos Alcaraz fan. Zandschulp was, he was better. He was better. He was slightly positive on that count. So yeah, a real positive from Zandschulp there. And net points for Carlos Alcaraz at 62%, and we mentioned earlier Zandschulp at 80%. So there's some differences there. There's a lot to potentially break down, and I think let's go through set by set and see if there's any real momentum swings to note, and then we can dive into the post-match comments from Carlos Alcaraz. Set then you can see here Zandschulp taking it 6-1 really impressively, and a clinical set of tennis by the looks of it. Not many extremely wide games or blocks, which means that some of the games, or majority of the games, were pretty quick. You can see the first 2 games, they're relatively chunky, but not anything to speak about. And held to 30 in the first game, Zandschulp. In the second game, he had a breakpoint at 30-40, took it the first time I'm asking, really impressive. And then from there, it was one-way traffic, really. Had a slightly longer game at 3-1. Again, 40-30, managed to take it, though, at the first time of asking the game point. And then at 4-1 up, he had break points at 15-40 on Alcaraz's serve. He took it again, that break point at the first time of asking. So really impressive. And then held to love at 5-1. So clutch in that first set. 21 minutes. That first is pretty quick. And look, there's a really impressive opening set from Zandschulp, breadsticking Alcaraz. Set 2 was potentially the set to really dive into because it was 7-5. So a late break for Zandschulp to take the set. And actually, he did manage to break early on Zandschulp in the set. You can see at 1-1. And actually, before we talk about that, you can see at 1-love even on Alcaraz's serve. Sorry, 1-love on Zandschulp's serve. You can see that Alcaraz had a break point, and he has a break point. So he's lost the first set, and they go into the second set. Alcaraz holds comfortably to 15. And in the second game, you can see there 30-40 on Zandschulp's serve, and he manages to save that break point and then take it to a couple of juices. Didn't have to face it on the break point and then holds. That's a really big hold. And it's a long game. You can see it's the longest game of the set. So that is a big, big opportunity for Alcaraz, and he doesn't take it. Then on Alcaraz's serve, Zandschulp then has break points at love 40, and Alcaraz saves a few of them. And then at 30-40, he's just not able to. Zandschulp eventually breaks. So what could have been the difference, right, that I could have made if he'd taken that first break point on Zandschulp's serve, Alcaraz? Alcaraz could have been 2-love up instead. He then finds himself 2-1 down and a breakdown, and Zandschulp serving to go 3-1 up. But what Alcaraz then did really well here was manage to gain some momentum back, taking a break point the second time of asking. So 2-2 it ended up being, so back on serve. And then there was a few pretty straightforward games you can see up until 4-3. And then we're at Zandschulp serving at 3-4 down. It's a longer game, no break points there for Alcaraz. And then he manages to hold when he's add up. And then 4-4 and 5-4, again, pretty straightforward games. And at 5-5 on Alcaraz's serve, Zandschulp gets the all-important break point. 15-40. He takes it the first time of asking. That's just so impressive from Van Zandschulp. It's very clinical in a lot of these moments. And then, of course, at 6-5, again, I mean, how impressive is it to serve to love, to serve out the set to love again? I mean, just absolutely no pressure by the looks of it. And watching him just didn't seem to be bothered or phased at all by the moment and takes it 7-5. So extremely impressive from him. Really made the most of the opportunities he got. And then in the third set, I mean, there's not a huge amount to talk about really because Alcaraz, I mean, he goes down a break, 3-2 in favor of Van Zandschulp, and then actually gets a couple of breakpoint opportunities himself, manages to break back to 3-all. So again, they trade breaks at some point in the set. But then after that, he doesn't get a sniff, Alcaraz, and it's Van Zandschulp who breaks to 15 at 4-all. And then at 5-4 again, he holds to love. I mean, all three sets he served. I mean, all three sets he serves it out to love. I mean, that's just clutch. If there's ever a word that described, if there's ever a phrase or something to describe, something being clutch, it would be serving out every single set in your match to love. I mean, it's just incredible, absolutely incredible from him. So fair play to him. In all honesty, it's just unbelievable performance from the Dutch player. And look, he was thinking of retirement. Sorry, he was having thoughts of retiring after some pretty adverse results, and I'll actually bring his form up on screen. So you can see here, I mean, didn't make it past the round of 16 at any tournament in the last year. And then in 2024, it's been, it's been pretty slim pickings, in all honesty, for him. Not really much to speak of, a lot of first and second round losses. So didn't play Montreal, Cincinnati. I think he played a couple of challenges, he said, in Holland to get his confidence back, and that would have helped. So that clearly shows the importance and the value to challenges, right? They're very important, not just stepping stones, but potentially confidence boosters for for players who are struggling form-wise as well, and the level's good there. So yeah, impressive from Van Zandschulp. And the only thing to note, I guess, from Carlos Alcaraz is, thinking about previous matches, the racket smash, how did that affect him? He'd never been seen smashing a racket in the past. And is that something that showed some of the frustrations, I guess, spilling out? Very intense last few months? Maybe. He said after the match, though, and I paraphrased some of this and just summed it up, so it's not word for word, of course. He mentioned his calendar is pretty dicey at the moment. So he said he needs to learn from how he manages his calendar. And look, he needs to be better with managing it because the quick turnaround from the Olympics, then he had a short break and then straight back into Cincinnati. And I think he's realized, like Emma Raducanu did, to be fair, and it's the opposite for her. She should have played more matches, that actually he's been playing a lot of tennis and it takes its toll. It takes its toll. He also mentioned he was surprised by Van Zandschulp's level, thought he'd get more free points. And he actually said that he didn't think the Novak Djokovic Olympic loss has affected him mentally and it had any bearing on the reason why he lost this. Now, I previously said that I think it could have an effect, and despite him saying that it doesn't affect him, which I think he'd say even if it was affecting him, surely it must. Even subconsciously, it must be playing on his mind a little bit. And it will take him a bit of time to get over it. I would be surprised if it's had no effect. I think long term it will be a positive thing and he'll turn it into a positive and he'll use it as motivation. But I think it's still very raw. And I'd be surprised if it doesn't play on his mind at all. He did also mention, though, that he hasn't been feeling mentally the best on court. Mental and physical fatigue potentially taking its toll, I think, is what he was trying to get out there, and that's understandable. So that's Carlos Alcaraz. 2 slams won this year, so not a bad year, of course, but wasn't able to follow up at the US Open. No hardcourt majors this year for him. He'll still have some important tournaments, of course, to play, and I'm sure he'll be in the ATP Tour Finals. So lots of tennis still to come from him, the Labour Cup as well, and potentially some Masters 1000 tournaments. So it's not over yet, the year, but for him at Slams, it is, and it's been a pretty successful year for him. But yeah, I'm sure he would have wanted to have done better in New York, but a fantastic performance from Botic van der Zandschulp has to be said. An inspiring performance. And who knows what he can do in terms of damage-wise if he continues to play at this level. So let's move on to Novak Djokovic then. For Novak Djokovic, it was a similar type of story, except I think the opponent that he was playing, of course, was in really good form. Alexei Popyrin is seeded. He played really well at the Canadian Masters and ended up, taking out some really top players. I think the only thing with that is he's just come to real prominence anyway in the North American hardcourt swing just now. But in the past, you could tell he could be dangerous, had big weapons, serve, forehand, big power behind those long levers, but just didn't really manage to make a really good, consistent run at some of the major tournaments. And, this is now starting to become that after he's made now the fourth round. So very impressive from him. Look, I mean, it's an interesting one because for Novak, I think his main goal was to win the Olympics, of course. He did that. And I think that was his main goal for 2024 anyway. And he just looked a bit flat, to be honest. He looked pretty flat. It was an awful match from him, is what he said. That was his words. And if we get into the nitty gritty of the match, well, and then we'll go through, of course, the match flow as well. I mean, Popyrin was hitting with huge power from the baseline. Big hitting paired with big serving and polished net play. It was a really complete performance, I think, from the Australian. Sorry, even he played really, really well. For Novak, he actually served better than previous matches where he was serving horribly, I think it's fair to say. And generally, I think his level was way below where you normally expect from him. And then this level was better, I thought, in this match, but still not at the heights that we normally expect from him. And that's why I think, he took a set, lost in 4 sets, but, the sets were pretty tight, but he still ended up losing because he lost to someone who's in form, playing some really good tennis, and had the momentum. And big hitting players in the past have tended to be the easiest type of player for Novak Djokovic to handle, but he looked quite sluggish and didn't really manage to find any rhythm, which was, I don't think it was surprising. I think he mentioned earlier that, he probably wasn't mentally where he should be for this tournament in terms of preparing for it. He obviously won the Olympic gold, and then he was partying. I think he was enjoying himself, fair play, and then he didn't play any tournaments beforehand. He came into the US Open, and I think we have to remember that yes, he didn't win Wimbledon, but he still made the finals. So he still played the same amount of matches as Alcaraz. Roland Garros is a bit different, of course, but yeah, I mean Wimbledon and then the Olympics, and he is 37. I think we need to factor that in. It does make a difference. So yeah, I mean, look, he pointed previously to not feeling 100% motivated, and then a potential reason for a big come down like this as well is after capturing the Olympic gold finally, when you go and have these massive highs, they're accompanied by a corresponding low. And I feel like that's probably what's happened here as well. Look, I mean, we said he'd play a lot of tennis, and he's not a young 21 like Alcaraz. He is an incredible athlete and a young 37, I think it's fair to say, but he's still 37. So it's the first year since 2017 that he's been slamless, which is pretty astonishing, by the way. I mean, unbelievable stat. And you could potentially look at it and say, oh, it's been a disappointing season. But as I said before, his main goal, and he did state this himself, was to win the Olympics. 2025 will be interesting, I think, in terms of slams for Novak, because it'll be interesting to see, given that 2024 is now the first year since 2002 that there hasn't been a Grand Slam champion named Djokovic, Federer, or Nadal. Will that now be the end of an era? Because that would mean Djokovic never wins another slam, which probably would be surprising, right? But the longer he doesn't win a slam, I think the less likely it becomes that he will win one because age is catching up to him, I think it's fair to say. In terms of some of the interesting things from the match as well, before we get into the match flow, so Djokovic actually served 16 aces, which is pretty good, right? It's actually very good over 4 sets. For him, Popyrin served the same, but the difference was the double fault count. He hit 14 double faults, which is a bit crazy, to be honest, and hit quite a few in the previous 2 matches, a lot of unforced errors as well. And then in terms of winners unforced errors, 40 winners to 49 unforced errors, so not an incredibly polished performance. And then for Alexei Popyrin, 36 winners to 25 unforced errors, so a bit different there. Only 48% of net points won for Djokovic, which is really, really low. 69% for Alexei Popyrin, so a big, big difference there. So, yeah, I mean, I think if we're being honest, it wasn't a very good performance from Djokovic, as he clearly stated post match as well. He did say it was some of the worst tennis he's ever played in his career in this tournament. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say, really. It's just clearly a shock. I did think he'd managed to get through it, but Popyrin came into it. He was motivated. He was playing some inspired tennis, and Djokovic just wasn't at the races, I think it's fair to say. And but it's interesting that all 3 medalists from the Olympics are now out of the US Open, right? They've all lost, which is really interesting. And on the women's side, it's not the same. There's still some in the draw. So, but is it a surprise transitioning so quickly from clay to hard court for both these players, Djokovic and Alcaraz? It's not easy. It's really not, especially given they play so much tennis as well. So, yeah, look, Popyrin came into this with the benefit of playing tennis in Canada and Cincinnati and getting used to the hard courts and really managing to peak for this moment. So, yeah, massive, massive kudos to the Australian, and he was clutch. He really was. So if we look at the match flow, set 1-6-4 to Popyrin. So as I said, yeah, a very close one. And interestingly, Djokovic had multiple break points. You can see in that 2-3 game, and that was a pivotal game. These types of games, and you can see it's a really wide block at 2-3 on Popyrin serve. Djokovic had 5 breakpoint opportunities, 5, and Popyrin managed to hold at the first time of asking, by the way, on a game point. So that is what you call clutch by the Australian. Djokovic goes 4-2 up. The match, even though he's not playing his best level, it can potentially change, right? Because the mental side of things then definitely gets it definitely changes in terms of Popyrin's outlook on the match changes. So does Djokovic's. Popyrin as well. If he starts losing 4-2 down, he probably starts thinking, "Oh no, I'm going to get destroyed by this goat now again." But instead, he had a really tough game, really long game at 2-3, saved 5 break points, managed to hold. The confidence he takes from that is massive, and it's a momentum swing. It's a momentum shift in that set. And it's a real notable moment, I think, in the set, that 2-3 game. So manages to hold, and you can see Djokovic holding to love really easily to go 4-3 up. And then again, you can see Popyrin battling a little bit. No break points for Djokovic, but had to serve out the game to Juice. And then at 4-all, I mean, this is just unbelievable, right? Djokovic has had 5 break points, doesn't take any of them previously in the set. Then Popyrin has 1 break point opportunity, although he did have a love 40 on Djokovic's serve. And he takes it at the first time of asking. And then, like Van der Zandschulp against Alcaraz, he serves it out to love again, which is just incredible at 5-4. I mean, talk about holding your nerves. Then if we look at the second set, 6-4 again to Popyrin, and this was a bit different because Djokovic had no break points in this whole set, and Popyrin had 3 opportunities, and it took him 3 opportunities to get that 1 break. He was love 40 up, or 40 love up even on Djokovic's serve, and managed to take it at 30-40, managed to break Djokovic, and then you can see pretty comfortable going. No juice games, or sorry, just the one juice game even on his serve at 4-3, but no break points. But that looked like a pivotal game, of course, because he's still a break up there. The rest of them, though, pretty easy going for Popyrin. And, Djokovic would have been disappointed, I think, with that game because, the couple of service games let him down. His serve, I think, let him down in moments. And that's why those first two sets went the way of Alexei Popyrin, because he just served better. And he managed his service games much better as well. I mean, look at the first game at Love Djokovic, really long game at Love, and had multiple juices. Popyrin didn't manage to bring up any break points, but Djokovic having to really fight in that service game. Then the fourth set was interesting though, because Djokovic managed to then come back into it. And this is where you're thinking, look, this is it. Djokovic is going to pull off, the typical comeback that we're so accustomed to seeing from the Serbian, where he's two sets of love down against Musetti, comes back, etc., etc., and you just thought this is going to be the same thing. It's going to be the same thing. You have to really destroy them in straight sets. But if he takes a third set, he then becomes a real heavy favorite to go on and win the match. That's just how it's perceived when it comes to someone like Djokovic, and rightly so. And you can see here in this third set, the momentum definitely shifted. He managed to take the break at 1-love, and Popyrin serving just couldn't hold serve. At 30-40, Djokovic pounces at the first breakpoint opportunity and then kind of rolls with that up until 3-1, where Popyrin then had two breakpoint opportunities. He does manage to break Djokovic back at the second time of asking. It's a long game. And then Popyrin, though, gets broken back again. So Djokovic breaks him back, and again, at the first time of asking, very impressive. And then actually Djokovic manages to take the set 6-2, so manages to get two breaks of serve after breaking him at 5-2. Again, a first break and set point opportunity for Djokovic takes it. So that was a pretty clinical set from Djokovic, and probably at this point, a lot of people were thinking, right, this is what we were expecting. Djokovic is here. He's now suddenly starting to ramp it up. He's starting to manage the match a lot better. He's got used to Popyrin's style. He's surely going to take over. The momentum has surely shifted. But no. And there's a really important game in this fourth set. And it's that game at 1-love on Popyrin's serve. So Popyrin's 1-love down. Djokovic holds to love in the opening game of the fourth set. Very, very impressive, by the way. Then in the second game, Popyrin's serving at love 1. And Djokovic has two breakpoint opportunities. Two. At 30-40 and add up. He doesn't take either of them. Popyrin then holds serve. And he not only holds serve, but then he goes, okay, great. I'm gonna get through my service game. Again, it's a bit of a battle. Okay, add up, still managed to hold. On Djokovic's serve at 2-all, he gets 4 breakpoint opportunities. 4. He managed to finally break on the fourth juice. So this is the type of thing that we would normally say about Novak Djokovic, right? Just fighting, and really just being persistent and just applying pressure constantly to the opponents, especially on the return games, and eventually getting them to fold. Well, it was Popyrin in this instance who managed to do that really impressively. So he then goes 3-2 up, which is fantastic. And then you're thinking, all right, okay, 3-2, but Djokovic has a couple of break points again to level things up, go 3-all, doesn't take them at 15-40 and 30-40. Popyrin holds, add up impressively. And then at 4-2, Popyrin has 2 breakpoint opportunities, which, by the way, Djokovic has got 3. He was 40-30 up, manages to then go add down, saves it, has 2 game points again on his serve, doesn't convert. Popyrin then has advantage again on a fourth juice. Again, at the fourth juice, he breaks. I mean, you just couldn't write it. He goes 5-2 up and he's serving for the set and the match, which is incredible, right? Djokovic, though, he comes up trump in that game, in that return game, because Popyrin's love 40 down. And he manages to get himself to juice Popyrin, but maybe some nerves potentially serving it out as well. Djokovic, though, manages to break, add up. So you think, okay, well, it's not over yet. 5-2 5-3. No, what can we do? He's still a breakdown Djokovic, but he holds add up. So pretty impressive. 5-4. Now, this is the real crunch moment because Popyrin at 5-4 is, I mean, if he was nervous at 5-2, he would have been nervous at 5-4, but he handles those nerves really well and he holds to love and seals the deal to take you in 4 sets, beating the defending champion Novak Djokovic and 24 Grand Slam champion. So it was a really impressive performance, I think, from Alexei Popyrin. I was just impressed with the way that he managed, I think, the match, his emotions, and tactically as well, how he carried out and executed his game plan. So, yeah, very impressive from him. And he clearly has the tools to succeed on these hard courts at the US Open. The question is, how far can he go? We shall see. But a massive upset, monumental upset. And, for Novak Djokovic, as I said, his year is over in terms of Grand Slams. There's still some events that he'll play, but it's not been a terrible year because, as I said, the main goal was the Olympic gold. So we'll see in 2025 with no Olympic year, how does he approach the slams? He'll still be in the mix, I'm sure. Whether he wins one or not, we shall see. But don't count him out yet. He'll have some time to rest the knee, I'm sure, as well, in the body. And then we'll really kind of see what comes of it when he's fully fit in 2025, fingers crossed. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Really do appreciate each and every one of you. Hope you enjoyed this video. A bit of a longer one and slightly different format, but I thought I would just go through both the matches because they're both upsets, and why not? And with some cool Matchflow graphics as well to take you through the story of the matches and also give you guys my insight. So let me know in the comments as well whether you enjoyed this format, and appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you very much. Stay safe and well. We'll see you on the next video.